Hello everyone, watch this review here with a special look at the Disney Store exclusive Modern X-Men figurine set. Alright, well maybe it's not a very special look, 'cause, I've done Disney Store exclusives before, and Disney Store exclusive really isn't all that special in and of itself, but it's a decent looking set. Now, you may or may not have seen some static Marvel characters at retail before. These are actually a bit smaller. I thought these would be about the same size, but I don't think they are. I think they're kind of like, I wouldn't say half the size, but maybe somewhere in that neighborhood. I mostly picked this set up for the Juggernaut, and unfortunately it's little paint flaws and stuff on them, so that kind of sucks, but on the lighter side, I didn't pay much for it, so that's always cool. It was free shipping promotion, then the set was clearance down to $10. I think it's usually something like 16 or 19. So, yeah. The packaging's really neat. It's this giant window that goes along most of the box. It's on the front, top, and the sides, so you can get a really decent view. And in the background, they have little pop-ups of a cardboard city. Again, it's kind of neat. Then the bottom, art bursts, and on the back, just some generic imagery. But hold on a second till I'll get this out pack. Here's another look at that really cool backdrop. Now, I would have loved to have just left this in pack and just used the whole thing as a display piece, but it takes up so much room. Maybe 3 times as much as the figures do individually, so, kind of have to do what you do just to save a little space. As for the figures themselves, the detailing, a little bit weak. The paint, pretty crappy apps. But the poses are generally pretty awesome. In particular, I do like the Storm here. It's this really cool flying pose. Gambit, I guess it's kind of standard, but still neat. Rogue, sort of an iconic look here. Just punching down to something. Then, of course, this is sort of running pose you'd expect from the Juggernaut. I guess I should go about these figures individually. Let's start with, I don't know, the one that I bought the pack for. As you can see, he's got some weird modeling, or mottled color on his arm here, and the other one as well. I think it's just when they were spraying on the paint apps for the suit, some of it got onto the skin portions. Kind of funky. Generally speaking, I like the pose. I think they captured the build and look of the Juggernaut pretty well. It's just kind of weird that for the figures themselves, they don't have like a lot of color. There's just not a good mix there. But if you look at the actual bases, or stands, or whatever you choose to call them, there's a lot of color used. In particular here, you'll notice that they have some yellowing and stuff, and a whole bunch of different colors for the boards that he's stomping on, yet for the figure, really not much. So it's kind of weird, but at the same time, very decent looking Juggernaut. Not quite as large as I would have hoped. There's really no attention to scale here, so that kind of sucks. I believe these are probably geared more towards younger children, what have you, just because they don't do anything. Though I could be mistaken. Up next, here's Wolverine. He gets part of a Sentinel head, which is really neat looking. Again, I almost think that there's more detail going into the base than there is on the figure. So it looks like the scrapes are even painted in some places. Very decent looking Sentinel head. I wish that they would have released a full Sentinel figure. See, you can never have too many Sentinels. Of course, I'm sure the X-Men would feel differently, but as you'll notice, the claws are incredibly short. Then they're all sort of in one piece rather than being separate blades. Pose itself, not all that dramatic. It doesn't look like he's ripping through anything. It looks like he's just standing on top of the Sentinel head and slashing. I think he's supposed to have been bursting out of it. I don't know. But again, I guess there's nice body detailing and stuff there. The muscle work's good. Yeah. more so than some of the other ones in the thing. Now, next to Juggernaut, Rogue was probably the one I was second most excited for. It's a really decent looking pose. It's something that I really recall the character doing on the cartoon and everything, as well as in the comics. He's sort of just flying down, smacking something. It's really cool. Actually, like, the hair and head sculpt looks a bit better than some of the previously released Toy Biz ones. Just kind of strange, but Toy Biz didn't so much do a great job in those ones. Yeah. And we get part of the Sentinel shoulder pad / arm, which is pretty decent. I like the sort of silver highlights they opted for this, and weird color. Next up, Nightcrawler. One of my favorite characters when I was younger. Not as much now. Like in the X-Men the arcade game, usually the one I'd play as. Then of course he was godlike in X-Men Legends 1, where you could just teleport through like half the stage and avoid most of the obstacles. That game was so unbalanced. And then subsequently even like abilities like flying were completely nerfed, so you'd have like a lava pit and you'd have to sort of navigate your way around it and build something there instead of just flying over it. That's subject for another time. His Bamf here is translucent white, or just a clear plastic, which it looks like they sprayed some pink onto it to give it a little bit of color. I mean, it looks decent, and his pose, I guess, is kind of cool. I'm not sure what he's doing. It looks like he's just jumping out and trying to tag somebody, so yeah. Decent enough pose. But the face here is kind of wonky just because they painted in like a little bit of the teeth, so it looks like you can only see its top teeth or something. Yeah. Gambit. Very cool looking pose. He's doing something both with the staff and the cards, which is decent. The detail is just kind of crappy on him. The neck looks way too short, the face looks a bit off. All around kind of a mess of a figure, but from a distance he looks pretty damn awesome, which is again part of why leaving it in pack might be for the best. He's around some general Sentinel parts, it looks like. Not sure what that's supposed to be. At first glance I thought it was maybe palms from their weapons or whatever, but no, it just looks like coils. I'm also not sure what's the best way to display them. I would assume probably like a head-on stance like they had in the box, but eh. Once again, let's look at Storm. Probably the third one I was most looking forward to in the set. It's a really awesome looking pose. I like how she's just sort of flying up out of these clouds. It's got a really neat aesthetic to it. The face, I guess, is okay. The hair, decent enough. They completely botched the color in the costume just because it's got like so much, I don't know if it's cross-contamination or what, but the white or silver has all this additional part that's like gray from the clouds, which kind of sucks. It doesn't look very clean. And if you were just seeing this in like a store or just sitting on the shelf by itself, you may or may not assume that it's a bootleg. And it's actually true of a lot of the other figures of the set, just because the quality control is obscenely low. But whereas I bought this from the DisneyStore.com, probably not a bootleg, unless Disney is bootlegging their own stuff, which would probably be a little sad. Just a really awesome looking display, especially where it's not even one solid cloud, it's got a whole different little separation there. Well, I mean, technically, yes, it is one cloud, but it's sort of twisting around, which is really neat. Actually, probably my favorite out of the set at this point. And finally, Colossus, who looks kind of dull. He tore off a Sentinel's thumb, which is neat, but other than that, he's just standing there, he's posing, he's like, yeah, I just tore off this guy's hand, then I ripped the thumb off for good measure. So I'm a badass. It's not a terribly dynamic pose. I mean, it's decent. I don't think he has as much detail as some of the other stuff. I mean, like, even his muscles look kind of flat with the torso here. Yeah. I mean, still, yeah, cool enough. You will notice they even have, like, the wires and stuff for the sentinel hand. And there's a lot of details to the stone here. All in all, would I recommend the set? Yeah, kinda. I don't think it's great, but at the same time, some of the figures look decent. At the price point I got it at, definitely a decent deal. But I mean, really, when it comes down to it, you could probably do without like half the figures in the set. And I imagine I'll probably only end up displaying like the forefront ones. The other ones probably will be tossed someplace and never seen or referenced again. But that's just how it goes sometimes. Now, it's important to note that they have several different sets of these. They have multiple X-Men sets, some of the other characters, including one that had, I think it was Magneto, Iceman, Cyclops, Jean Grey. Then, of course, they have an Avengers set. They have, I mean, a Spider-Man with rogues and stuff, except for the Spider-Man has, like, multiple different Spider-Man figures and then just 3 or 4 rogues, which I thought was kind of stupid. But this is definitely going to be the only one I pick up out of the sets because it had more characters I was interested in. And I don't know, I don't really collect statics all that much. I'm more into articulate figures. They've got to move, they've got